The narcissist's most desperate begging emerges not from dramatic confrontations or emotional goodbyes, but from the psychological void created when their victim achieves complete internal closure without ever announcing it externally. This silent severance operates invisibly. The victim continues existing in physical proximity or shared spaces while having already left psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. The narcissist senses this departure on an instinctual level before fully comprehending what has changed, triggering increasingly frantic attempts to restore connection with someone who has quietly and irrevocably moved beyond their reach. This form of closure proves devastating to narcissists because it denies them the dramatic ending they could weaponize or the emotional reactions they could manipulate, leaving them grasping at someone who appears present but exists in an entirely different psychological universe. The internal decision that requires no announcement. The silent closure begins with an internal shift where the victim stops hoping for change, releases expectations of authentic apology, and accepts that the person they loved never existed beyond carefully crafted performance. This recognition arrives without fanfare or declaration. It's a quiet letting go that happens in the victim's mind and heart, while their external behavior initially remains unchanged. They've completed their grieving process alone, worked through their anger privately, and arrived at genuine acceptance without needing the narcissist's participation or acknowledgement. This internal closure operates powerfully because the narcissist cannot manipulate or interfere with processes happening entirely within someone else's consciousness. They sense something fundamental has shifted, but cannot identify what changed or how to reverse it. The victim maintains surface civility while having withdrawn all emotional investment, creating a disorienting reality where the narcissist's usual manipulation tactics encounter blank walls instead of emotional reactions, the calm indifference that triggers their panic. The narcissist begins experiencing profound panic when they realize their provocations generate no emotional response. Their love bombing produces polite acknowledgement without rekindled passion, and their manufactured crises fail to summon their victims' caretaking instincts. This calm indifference communicates something the narcissist finds unbearable. They have become psychologically irrelevant to someone who once organized their entire emotional life around earning approval and avoiding abandonment. This indifference differs fundamentally from the cold shoulder or strategic distance the narcissist has weaponized countless times. Those tactics carried the electric charge of suppressed emotion, signaling continued investment beneath surface hostility. Authentic indifference radiates genuine neutrality, the emotional equivalent of how someone might regard a distant acquaintance rather than a former intimate partner. The narcissist recognizes they're facing someone who has genuinely moved on internally rather than someone still fighting against continued attachment, the desperate escalation as they sense loss. When the narcissist comprehends their victim has achieved silent closure, their behavior escalates into increasingly desperate attempts to provoke any emotional response that would confirm continued psychological connection. They cycle through their entire manipulation repertoire with mounting franticness, love bombing with greater intensity, manufacturing increasingly dramatic crises, deploying flying monkeys to plead their case, or even offering unprecedented concessions and promises of change they've never made before. This escalation exposes the depth of their dependency on their victim's emotional engagement. They would rather be hated with passion than regarded with mild disinterest, as hatred at least confirms their continued impact on their victim's emotional state. The silent closure denies them even this consolation, forcing them to confront that they've become forgettable rather than unforgettable, a fate their grandiose self-image cannot tolerate. The begging that reveals their true desperation. The narcissist's eventual begging for another chance emerges from their recognition that they've lost something they believed was permanently theirs, their victim's psychological investment and emotional availability. They might offer elaborate apologies acknowledging specific harms, promise to attend therapy or make concrete changes, express vulnerability they've never shown before, or paint vivid pictures of the transformed relationship they could build together. These desperate offers reveal that their victim's silent closure has accomplished what years of arguments, boundaries, and ultimatums never could, penetrating the narcissist's defenses to expose their authentic terror of abandonment. Yet even this begging typically reflects strategic desperation rather than genuine transformation. The narcissist seeks to restore their supply source rather than repair genuine harm, evidenced by their promises focusing on what their victim wants to hear rather than demonstrating actual insight into their destructive patterns. Their begging reveals not remorse for harm caused, but panic at losing access to psychological sustenance they desperately need for their own stability. The power of silent closure lies in its completeness. The victim has already done the emotional work of letting go without requiring the narcissist's participation, permission, or acknowledgement. This internal freedom cannot be manipulated away because it exists independently of the narcissist's actions or words, leaving them begging for another chance with someone who has already moved beyond them so thoroughly that even their most desperate pleas land in psychological void where obsessive concern once resided.